Hello and welcome back to Something Z, and welcome to If Naruto had the Two Tails Part 4. Last time on the What If, Team 7 faced the second phase of the Chunin exams, and during this phase, Naruto got an extra seal placed on him, and Sasuke got the curse mark, and afterward, Team 7 was able to pass the second phase of the exams. Okay, so now that's out of the way, let's jump into the video in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we begin this what if the morning of the last part, and when the Genin were told to wake up, they were given 15 minutes to prepare, and when those 15 minutes were up, the third Hokage walked into the room, and he congratulated them all for making it so far. Then he told them to follow him into the next room, and when they walked into the next room, they found themselves in a large arena, and then they were told to line up in their teams, and when they were lined up, they were told that since too many people passed the last part of the exams, they will be doing 1v1s to see who will go to the actual final part of the exams. And right before they were shown the matches, Kabuto raised his hand, and he forfeited, because he was injured from the previous part. And when he left, the main examiner showed the names of the first matchup, which was Sasuke and Yoroi. And seeing this, everyone else began to walk to the stands to get out of the way. And while everyone was walking to the stands, Kakashi walked over to Sasuke, and he told him that he knew what was on his neck. So he told him that if it went out of control, he would force him to quit. And when he was done, he asked Sasuke if he understood. And in response, Sasuke nodded. And when Kakashi saw this, he walked away to the stands. And when everyone left and when the two were ready, the match began. And when it did, Sasuke ran at Yoroi and he began to do hand-to-hand combat, since he knew he couldn't use ninjutsu without feeling an intense pain throughout his entire body. And when Sasuke began to fight him, he got hit multiple times, and he realized after the 5th hit that he was getting weaker with every hit. And after the 6th hit, he was able to realize that Yoroi was sucking out his chakra whenever he made contact with him. So Sasuke backed away and he tried to figure out a way to beat him. And after around 30 seconds, he remembered what Lee did to him before the exams even started. So Sasuke ran at Yoroi and he kicked him into the air, and he began to do a barrage of attacks, with the last one being a kick to the back, which flung Yoroi back to the ground. And when he hit the ground, Yoroi was too injured to continue fighting, making Sasuke the winner of the first match. And right after the match, Kakashi took Sasuke to a remote location to take care of the curse mark. So now we skip a couple of matches, so now it's time for the match between Naruto, Kiba, and Akamaru. And when the match began, Akamaru and Kiba swallowed the pill, which boosted their power. And when they felt the effects, Akamaru turned into Kiba. And when he was fully transformed, the two Kibas ran at Naruto. And seeing this, Naruto began to shoot out Mike's hairballs at the two, but the two were able to easily avoid them. And before Naruto was able to hit them, the Kibas were able to get to Naruto, and they began to attack him, eventually launching him a couple of feet away. And when Naruto landed, he decided that he needed to go all out, so he then tried to draw out the two tails chakra. But when he tried, he didn't get that much, and he only got a little bit stronger. And while Naruto was trying to draw out the chakra, the Kibas were able to get to Naruto and they hit him again, launching him a couple of feet. And when Naruto landed, he made around 30 clones, and when they were all fully formed, they began to shoot out Mike's hairballs that were a bit powered up, which the two were able to mostly avoid, with some only being hit a couple of times, which slowed them down a bit. But even with those burns, the two kept going, and using fang over fang, they began to attack the Narutos, while they were still shooting out Mike's hairballs. And after a couple of minutes, only the original Naruto was left. And seeing this, Naruto decided to go for his trump card, so he then took in a deep breath. And after a couple of seconds before the Kibas were able to get to him, he shot out a fireball jutsu aimed at the ground between him and the Kibas. And when the fireball hit the ground, smoke and dirt began to fill the arena, covering all three of them with a smoke smell, as well as hiding Naruto. And when the arena was seeable again, there was 3 Kibas, because when Naruto was hiding, he transformed himself into Kiba. And seeing that there was another Kiba, the real Kiba began to smell the other two. And when he smelled Naruto on one of the Kibas, he hit that Kiba. And when that Kiba hit the ground, smoke surrounded him. And when the smoke was gone, there on the ground was Akamaru. And seeing that it was Akamaru, Kiba punched the other Kiba. But again, when the Kiba hit the ground, he got surrounded by smoke. And when it was gone, there was another Akamaru. And while Kiba was distracted since he was trying to figure out what was going on, Naruto transformed back to normal, and he shot out a Mike's hairball right under Kiba's nose, which he was able to mostly avoid, with him only burning the hair under his nose. But even with this, Naruto's plan was able to work. Because of the pills that Kiba and Akamaru swallowed, their senses were increased, making it so the smell of burning hair began to fill his nose, and it became intoxicating. And while Kiba was distracted, Naruto ran at Kiba, and while he was running, he made multiple clones. And when the group of Narutos got to Kiba, they began to combo attack him, using almost the same technique that Sasuke did for his match, was the final attack being a kick to the back, launching Kiba back to the ground. And when Kiba hit the ground, he was too injured to continue, so Naruto was labeled the winner of the match. So now we skip past the rest of the matches, and everything we just skipped will happen the exact same as in the canon. So Hinata gets defeated, Lee's body gets destroyed, and Kakashi had to deal with Orochimaru. And when all the matches were done, beginning the path lined up in the middle of the arena, and they were told that they will have about a month to train before the actual event. But before they leave, they show the matchups for the next phase of the exams, with Naruto having to fight Neji in the first round. And when they were done, they were told to leave. And after Naruto left the building, he found Kakashi and he asked him to train him. But hearing this, Kakashi told Naruto that he would be busy busy, so he told him that he didn't have time to train him. But then he told him that he has someone who can train him instead. And after Kakashi said that, he began to walk away. But before he was out of earshot, he told him to meet him on the Hokage head the next morning. So now we skip to the next morning, and Naruto is currently sitting on the fourth Hokage's head. And after a couple of hours, Kakashi appeared on top of the mountain with someone walking beside him. And when they got close enough, Naruto was able to recognize him. It was a Bisu. And when the two got close enough to talk, Naruto asked Kakashi why did he bring a Bisu, and he told him that he was stronger than him, and he was about to tell him about the time he beat a Bisu using one attack. But before he could explain, a Bisu ran to Naruto and he covered his mouth, and he whispered into his ear that if he kept quiet, he would treat him to ramen. So Naruto then shut up, and after a couple of minutes of talking, Kakashi walked away. And when Kakashi was out of view, a Bisu told Naruto that he didn't want to be his student, and he didn't want to be his teacher either. So he gave him a deal, which was if he could escape him, then he would resign from being his instructor, and he would make sure that Kakashi would have enough time to train him. And hearing this, Naruto immediately jumped off the Hokage's head to find a place to hide. But after hours of trying to hide and being found, Naruto gave up. So the two of them went to go eat ramen. And when they were done, they went to the Leaf's hot springs. And there, Naruto trains how to walk on water. But after half an hour of training, a Bisu notices an old man with white hair peeping into the girls' changing rooms. So he went to stop him. But when he confronted the man, he was defeated in one shot when the old man summoned a giant toad, and the toad shot out his tongue in a Bisu's gut. And Naruto, when he sees this, runs to a Bisu and he tries to wake him up. But after a couple of minutes, Naruto gives up since he could tell that a Bisu would be knocked out for at least a couple of hours. Then he shouts for the old man's name, which he found out was Jiraiya. And once Naruto found out the old man's name, he told him that he would have to be his temporary trainer, since he just knocked out his last one. And after an hour of trying to persuade Jiraiya gave in, and he agreed to supervise his training. So they then go to a lake outside the Leaf. And at the lake, Naruto does the same training he did at the hot springs. But after trying 10 times, Naruto takes off his jumpsuit, since it was wet. And once it was off, he went back to the lake to try again. But now that his shirt was off, Jiraiya could see the seal that was on Naruto's stomach. And when he failed that attempt, Jiraiya told him to come to him. And reluctantly, after some time, Naruto made it to him. But the moment he got to him, Jiraiya seemingly punched him in the gut. While in actuality, Jiraiya undid the extra seal that was placed on him by Orochimaru. And when Jiraiya was done, he put his hand away and he told Naruto to try again. And when Naruto tried again, he could easily walk on the water. And he could tell that he was stronger than he was a minute ago. And feeling this, Naruto tried to force out the two tails' chakra, and when he got enough, he began to transform, gaining blue fire hair and different colored eyes again. And when he was done transforming, Naruto began to jump around, shooting out mice hairballs at the lake, so he didn't start a fire. And seeing all of this, Jiraiya was able to tell that his assumption was correct, which was Naruto was a two-tailed Jinchuriki. And after around 5 minutes, Naruto stops and he powers down. And when he was done, he went to Jiraiya, and when they were face to face, Jiraiya asked him how much can he control the two tails. So Naruto then told him about his initial form and his limit. And when he was done, Jiraiya told him that he was done for the day, and that he should come back tomorrow for his next lesson. So now we skip to the next day, and when Naruto was able to get Jiraiya undistracted, Jiraiya summons a giant toad with a scroll in his mouth. Jiraiya then explains the techniques that he will teach Naruto, which was the summoning jutsu. And after he was done explaining the premise, Naruto signs the scroll by biting on his thumb, then signing it with his own blood. And then Naruto began to practice using the summoning jutsu, and the results are just about the same, with Naruto only being able to summon tadpoles. And after around 4 days, Naruto still hasn't made that much progress. So Jiraiya decided to teach Naruto in a different way. So on that day when Jiraiya met up with Naruto, he was weirdly happy, and he did things that he wouldn't normally do, such as buy Naruto ramen and telling him to live today as if it was his last. And eventually, Jiraiya takes Naruto to a different training area, and before Naruto could react, Jiraiya pushes him through a bush. And when Naruto was able to see again, he found himself falling down into a ravine. And seeing that the ground was coming soon, Naruto began to think of what he should do next. But no matter how hard he thinks, he couldn't think of anything he could do that wouldn't lead to him getting hurt or kill him. But eventually, the two tails gives Naruto a suggestion to use its power to boost his summoning jutsu. So Naruto then began to do the hand signs, and before he hit the bottom, he was able to use the summoning jutsu. And unlike his other attempts, he was actually able to summon a toad, which cushioned his fall. And when Naruto landed, he heard something begin to shout. And when Naruto was able to tell that it was the toad he summoned, he was able to tell what it was saying. And it was asking where was Jiraiya. And in response, Naruto shouts that he is outside the ravine. But right after that, Naruto got too full of himself, and he said that since he was the one that summoned the toad must do whatever he says, which understandably makes the toad upset. So the toad then decided to make a deal with Naruto, which was if he was able to stay on his back for the rest of the day, he would consider making him his underling. And seeing that this was the only option to get the toad's help, Naruto accepts the deal. And when the toad hears this, it jumps into the air as high as it could, to the point where they were miles over the ravine. And when the challenge began, the toad just shook itself in order to fling off Naruto. But when that didn't seem to work, it started to jump around and shake. And the way Naruto stayed on was by using his shadow clone to bring him back to the toad whenever he got flung off. And whenever he got too tired, he would use a bit of the two tails of chakra in order to power him up, while still not draining him. So now we skip to the end of the day, and Naruto was able to stay on the toad's back for the whole time. And when the toad declared that the challenge ended, Naruto passed out since he overdid it. And when the toad noticed that Naruto passed out, he took him to the Leaf's hospital, and he left him at the front doors. And when the toad landed in front of the hospital, it made a giant thud. And when the doctors heard this, they went to see what it was. And when when they looked out the front door, they saw an unconscious Naruto with a giant footprint right next to him. And seeing that he was low on chakra, the doctors took him in for the rest of the night so he could be treated. And this is where I'm going to the what if. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next time on Something Z.